Hey kids, welcome back. We're going to take the 50s into the 60s, get rid of that old generator, put an alternator on there, and maybe make you think a little bit about whether or not you need to buy that one-wire alternator or not. I never do. It's cheaper to buy the conventional ones. We're going to check it out. Let's do it. Okay, well here's basically what we're doing. You can see I got the battery charger or battery tender hooked up on this because I've been using this a lot more than it really ever got used in recent years, and there is no charging system. If you go back into the series that we're making for this fork truck here, you will remember that there is no charging system at all. This had a direct current DC generator that charged a battery, and it's been deactivated. You can see there's nothing hooked up here long ago. Whether it works or whether it doesn't, I don't care, because we've pretty much converted this to 12 volt, and this is 6 volt, and there's so little wiring on this. This isn't like converting a car from 12 volt, from 6 volt to 12 volt. We'll just run a new wire. So we're going to put an alternator on it not because DC generators are bad. They worked on this old fork truck for years, and plenty of old cars do just fine with them. But just the reliability of them is not in question. It's more of a replacement cost if something goes wrong. You know, getting the pieces and parts didn't used to be hard, but it's getting to that point. And the thing that I love to use, which is getting kind of old these days, is something similar to this. This General Motors 10 SI, and 10 has to do with the size of the unit, and SI, I believe, is systems integrated, meaning there's no external regulator. It's all integrated into this single piece here, where this would have had an external regulator, where this just output a charge, and the regulator metered that to the battery so it wouldn't overcharge or undercharge it. In modern, I guess modern, if you want to call 70s modern alternator like this, it's all done in one piece. Now you may say, well, hey, I can go get a one-wire alternator, and I don't have to mess with anything but this on the back, and I can ignore these things here. Well, you sure can, but why pay the extra money? And also, those one-wire alternators, that's not like really a hot rod thing. It's more of a factory part that they put on like stationary engines, like a power generation unit that just ran at the same speed all the time. Well, if you're driving a car, you're speeding up, you're slowing down. So when it's not really spinning fast, it's not really charging right. So these things will, if you hook these up, which is just a regular, car truck type alternator, it's going to charge no matter what speed it's turning. And I've done this. I love these things. I tell you, I think every brand does something really good. And General Motors, electronics, Chrysler does some awesome electronics. They invented the alternator, but GM Electronics are good stuff, man. Delco, great. So I love them. I put them on old Fords. We're going to put them on this Towmotor truck, old GMs, Mopar, you name it. I'm breaking the laws here by mixing the parts up, but they're just nice. They're compact, and they're easy to wire. I mean, you're basically jumping one of these over to here. You're running the other one to the ignition switch, and this one that's tied to that one goes straight to the battery. There is nothing to it. There's no reason to spend that money on that one wire unless you just want it. And if you're so inclined, you can get rebuild kits for these things and put an old one back together out of the junkyard if you want to. Now, again, like I said, they quit making these. They put these in new cars a long time ago, but there are so many of them because they put them on everything. You can get one no problem. And with the rebuilders out there, I mean, they're down to, I don't know, maybe 20 bucks or something. I mean, it's silly how cheap you can get one for. So this one is probably not any good, but we're going to use it for fitment purposes, because we're going to pull this L1 off and bolt this up to it. I've did something very similar to this many times with cars that had generators. Put one on my 63 Ford, had a similar looking generator. Really, most all of them generators or alternators, or alternating current generators. They kind of mount about the same way. They have a bigger boss down here that has a pivot bolt in it, and it spins or rotates on that. And then there's a arced slot that this upper bolt locks it in place. So, that's how you tighten your belt up. Tight, loose. If the crankshaft's that way, but you get the idea. So this works the same way. It's just got a much longer, hard to see back in there, but imagine that generator starts here and alternator stops here, and generator keeps going. That's really the only difference. So it's got a kind of the pivot in two places. It's hooked to the very back here that you can't really see, and then up to the front. But it's doing the same thing. It's rocking back and forth to tighten that belt up. So we're going to pull this out of there once we take the back of this seat off and get to work. Okay, we got the seat back pulled off. Just a couple bolts on the top there. Check out the last episode. We'll talk about what these are. These are super titanium bolts that are on pretty much everything on this fork truck. Pretty unique history and kind of definitely overkill for this, but that's why it's still around after, 72 years? So let's dig into this. As you can see, kind of what I was describing earlier, there's that kind of sliding arc. And then the bottom's going to have that pivot. You can kind of see how heavy duty all this stuff is, which is, not crazy for a piece of equipment. This has got two big heavy section belts. I think these are called L belts, and not what, like your automotive V belts. They're just big, thick, heavy stuff, and it's got two of them. So they're not playing around, but we'll get stuff loosened up and see if we can get this pulled out of there and see where we're at, because this has got a double groove pulley, of course, two belts, two grooves. Usually the center diameter of these pulleys is close enough you can kind of swap them, mix and match. I don't know what I'm getting into here. We may be stuck in our tracks trying to put that pulley on the GM 10SI alternator, or we may have to make a little adapter or something. I don't know. That's all part of being doing the Dare to Be Different thing, right? But we'll get it on there one way or another. One thing I forgot to mention, this counterweight that's on the top, there's two bolts in these little kind of T-slots. They kind of are captured in there, and they stick down through the top of the frame. So there's two of them there, and there's two more on this side too. I'd never had this seat back off, so I didn't really know what I was getting into. But this thing is just held in place by gravity. There's no nuts on those bolts. They're just sitting in there. You can see it's kind of even slid back. That's why those bolts are at an angle. So yeah, we may focus on that a little bit too and try to straighten that out. We'll see. All right, well, there she is out of the tow motor. Still see some of the original tow motor yellow on there. Let's see what I mean there. It's got the pivot is kind of a two-point deal. And when we look at the bracket, you'll see what I mean. The silver lining to what we got going on here is if you look at our alternator that we're swapping out, kind of hard to see. Maybe have to go on faith here, but the center distance or distance between the upper mount and the lower mount is the same or really close. Kind of get a little bit of a optical illusion there, but it may be, oh, I don't know, half-inch different or something. But that's enough, or so small that we can move this bracket up a little bit and deal with it. It'll be fine. It'll still be able to slide in that bracket because this is really not a circular arc. It's kind of a crazy pattern. This actually is kind of wiggles around there too, so it might be a designed-in feature there. You can kind of see what it looks like without the generator in place there. When I was talking about, they had the kind of the double pivot. Well, we're just going to use this front one here, and we'll put spacers or whatever we need to get it done. These belts, I don't know, they're kind of iffy. I'm going to try to figure out what exactly they are. Kind of tough to get them out of there the way they're situated. We have to have this hooked up because it's got two belts, but they really run everything. They're wrapped around all of it. Water pump up top and hydraulic pump at the bottom. And interestingly, I didn't see this till just now. Actually, the distributor is kind of driven off the back of the hydraulic pump, which is kind of cool. See if I can get you a better shot of that. You can kind of see there's like a right angle drive in there. Like a tail housing on that. Kind of sticking out there. Goes over, drives the distributor, which if you look at the earlier episodes, I believe that other applications use this hole for the distributor, but since you're sitting right on top of that, and that would be kind of an owie if you sit down on the distributor, they moved it down here and drove it off of this hydraulic pump, it looks like. So pretty clever, Lots of interesting little pieces on this machine here, but yeah, we can get that alternator in there. I may not mess with the belt replacement this time because I can't tell if they're two different ones, which they should not be. They should be identical, or one is just way more stretched than the other. But the one's kind of frayed, and the other one is it's kind of brittle. So, they'll work, but I want to make it right, because it's not like this thing's going to strand you. But I'll tell you what. I have been needing to use it and went out to fire it up and had an issue. I mean, we talked about carburetor float getting stuck because there was no fuel filter in this. And again, in a previous episode, hint, go back and watch them. And that's the dealings with an old tractor, car, motorcycle, whatever. You got to be prepared to fix those repairs or lack of repairs that other people have done. So we're gonna work on figuring out what we're gonna do with these pulleys here. Not sure yet. It's a really long snout on this one here, and the strange thing is, just now realized, if this thing's got a cooling fan on it, it's internal. I don't think it has one at all, which is pretty crazy. I think it's basically, it's got to be relying on the fan, the radiator fan. It's so close to it. I guess that makes sense. I mean, it's like a 4-blade fan. It looks like something off a Howard Hughes aircraft or something there, and very very spooky finger chopping looking thing. But it's so close to the alternator. Now it makes sense, or a generator rather. They didn't run a fan on this at all. So that may be our saving grace, kids. We might have enough room to just take the fan off of this thing put that pulley on there. Boom, done. Okay, earlier I mentioned L belts. It wasn't just a guess. Past job, I worked for a fan company and did a lot of belt drives for big horsepower motors turning big fans. I mean, like 82-inch and up giant wheel fans. I mean, kind of like a squirrel cage, but massive. I mean, something that would eat you alive. And they had 3, 4, 5, 6 belts, massive hookups. And this was in the trash because, we use different methods to determine belt length. And I said, nah, that's not going in the trash. Got some paint overspray on it, but pretty cool. I've kept it. I've had this for, 20 years. But don't really use it on cars too much, but you can get a reference from it. The numbers don't make any sense for car belts, but they will make sense for this Towmotor. And, if you are a dummy like me, you need to read the instructions on how it works. And, if you didn't know, Browning has the most complete V-drive line. Okay, before I go tearing this apart and taking that pulley off of there, I want to get a reference measurement. You see, I got the level set on top here just so I got something to measure to. And we're not going aerospace accurate here, but I need a starting point. Whether you can see that or not, you can kind of trust me. It's about 2 7/16 from the face of the mounting point to the end of that pulley. So that's really all I need to know when we attempt to put this on the alternator, is how far out from that mounting point, which will be similar on our alternator, how far out from there to the end of the pulley, and then our belt should be in line if we don't move the brackets, which we're not planning on doing that. But I would normally take a digital picture of that or write it down at least so I have a record of it. But hey, I'm filming it, so I can always go back and listen to what I said or look at what I filmed. But that's something that, here's a tip for you. That's something I forget to do a lot. Start making something and take it apart before I figure out what's my starting point. So definitely go and measure, take pictures, get a record of what you started with before you start trying to customize something, because it's a whole lot harder to just wing it when you don't know where you started. The other thing I did here is this was just coated with 72 years of schmutz from being in an industrial environment. That was packed all the way up to the end with dirt and grease. Make sure there's a nut on there that holds a pulley on. No surprise, but yeah, it was completely packed. So I cleaned all that out, put some brake clean on it, scrubbed it up, wiped it down, cleaned it again, and then kind of filled that up with some penetrating oil. And it's been setting for a day and a half or so. So it ain't going to get much better than that. If it's going to come loose, it will or it won't at this point. So the thing I don't know is this is probably right-hand thread, but I can't tell. It's right out to the end, so I can't really see. Sometimes left-hand thread nuts, they're marked. They'll have a little tick mark or something on them, or around the edges of them. I don't see that, but that doesn't mean it isn't. So we may be in for an adventure here getting this off of there, but we're going to give it a shot. Well, kind of good news, bad news with the pulley situation here. That I don't even think I needed an impact wrench. That nut that was holding that on there, it just buzzed right off of there. I mean, just one ugga-dugga, and it was off. So whether the penetrating oil helped or just the fact that, this was quality made, it came loose easy, don't know. There was a lock washer stuck down in there. Of course, that didn't want to come loose, but get your magnetic pickup tool, which, hey, I found some other stuff, it looks like. Stick that in there and popping on out of there. I thought, hey, we're rocking. This sheave pulley was still on the shaft here, so there's some space behind here. I thought, well, you know, I'm not gonna start, you know, really getting aggressive with it, but got the little tie rod separator, what you commonly call a pickle fork, I guess, which that's some big pickles, man. But you know, I'm not going wacko hitting on this thing like a you know, Thor's hammer, but I just want to push in between there slightly and see if it'd pop off of there. Well, a little tap and no movement, and I said, okay, we're going to stop, because I think I said before in some of the other stuff, with this old stuff, go easy, because you don't know if you can get another one, and I just about guarantee if I broke this, I'd have to come up with, I'd have to make something, because I'm not going to find another one. I can't even find a service manual for this old thing. So what it looks like is going on down in there. Hopefully this lights up where you can see it. On the top side of that, right about the 1 o'clock position, you see that little notch? That looks like a keyway in there. So my guess is that this is like a harmonic balancer or something on the crankshaft of an engine, that there's a key on the shaft of this generator, and the sheave pulley is got a key slot broached in it too, and that's what keeps it on there. It's probably not willing to let go without a fight, which is fine, because we could get a puller around here without damaging this. This is pretty thick, but the bad thing about it is there's really no center point to that, which you normally kind of need for one of those. They usually have like a recessed area to where the end of a gear puller, or harmonic balancer puller, or whatever you got, kind of can ride in there so it doesn't pop off left or right when you're putting force on it, because you know it's a big screw and you're kind of squeezing them together almost like a vise, and you're getting this to give up and pop loose, come towards us. Well, without that, that thing's going to jump off. So I'm not sure what we're going to do yet, but the adventure continues. Well, would you look at that? It starts to scare me a little bit when things just are too easy. This came off of here without a lot of effort. I filled this hole up with some penetrating oil again, since I got the nut off of there, and that washer that was in there, and thought, well, I'll let it, see if it'll kind of slide down in there, you know, leak down in there, and maybe make it a little easier to take off. And I walked away for a little bit and came back, and it all ran all through. So I'm like, all right, well, it's getting somewhere, which it did kind of wet the inside of it in there. Probably hard to see, but I thought, well, heck, you know, this should come off then. What I didn't realize when I showed you earlier, I had this pickle fork. This is almost exactly the size of this shaft, so it kind of hangs up on there. So I think what I was feeling when I was trying to push this in there was it was getting caught on that shaft. So what do you do then? Well, you go to the next bigger size here, which this is the one for, you know, ball joints and larger stuff. And I mean, I probably didn't even need to hit it with the hammer. It pushed off that easy. So hey, we're don't want to jinx it, but it's coming together. And yeah, it definitely had a key, Woodruff key, and a keyway on the inside of this to hold it. I mean, that's to keep it from turning. Even if you had it tight, you know, it could still turn. But there's other ways to keep that from happening. I mean, this could have had a flat ground on it and some kind of, you know, funky shaped hole broached in there that wouldn't allow it to turn, or it could have had a taper. It could have had a taper and a keyway. It could have had, you know, a set screw coming in from the side. Like you see a lot of shivs on electric motors. They're like that. They're pushed in onto the shaft, and then at a right angle, they've got a set screw coming in, and it's kind of digging into the side of the shaft here. But this is how this one was worked. Shaft straight, Woodruff key, and it came off. So hey, we're getting her done. Something cool about these alternators is that there's 4 little bolts on the back, little 5/16 head bolts. If you take those out, you can rotate the back of this to one of 4 positions. So you've got, the terminals here. You can have that, just straight up, or 3 o'clock, or 6 o'clock, depending on how you mount it. Actually, I got it upside down. Normally, it would be something like this. So for our case, this is pretty much the worst position we'd want it in, because this would be the side of the block right here. If you remember, it's mounted right there. So those terminals are going to be right up against the head and the block here. It's workable, but not ideal. I'd rather have it coming straight out, or at least on the side here. The bottom and the left, bottom probably be the worst, but it's whatever you want. And they did that so that they could put it on different engines, different applications. This might go on the left side, right side of the vehicle. Did the same thing with their starters. Not so much being able to rotate stuff, but the drive end, or the nose cone, they made different ones so they could put that same motor on the left or the right, and both the different types of engines. Pretty clever. Like I said, GM had this stuff figured out. So we'll pull these out, and we're gonna rotate around. Probably put it straight up. I think I like that because I can poke my head in there and see it. Because remember, we got the seat back here that's going to obstruct our view. So I may put it coming in from the side too. Not sure yet, but we're gonna get it moved. One thing to note though, take these out. Don't pull this all the way off, because if you do, there's spring-loaded brushes that ride on the shaft here that's spinning inside. And if you do that, it's not the end of the world. It's just another hassle. You have to pin them. They're spring-loaded. You have to pull them back and put a pin in to hold them out, and then slide it back on and take the pin out. If you can, if you take that apart and screw up, you'll see what you need to do in there. But it's not necessary if you just take the bolts out and just kind of lightly lift it and rotate it to where you need it to. Put it back on, put the bolts in, boom, done. Okay, this isn't supposed to work, but it did, and I'm not complaining. This is our generator pulley, our double groove wide belt generator pulley. Just happened to be the exact right thickness and hole diameter as the original pulley that was on this alternator, single wide. It's nice when things work out like that. You can kind of see a little bit here. Let me move the camera around without making you dizzy, I hope. Look how much wider the groove is on that versus that. I think these like automotive type belts are kind of, I believe those are like a 4L, and this is like a 5L. So not totally sure. There's a chart, you can look that up, but it's just a heavier duty, but it's still, in the world of belts, it's light duty. I kind of misspoke earlier and said these are heavy duty. They're heavier duty. I mean, they make ones that are definitely a different profile for high horsepower, like up to 1,000 horsepower or something. But this is not the case. But this shouldn't have worked, but it did. I'm not going to argue with it. We got a GM alternator that's going to work on our 1950 Towmotor with a Continental 4-cylinder engine in it. Now, earlier we measured that pulley stick out from the face of the mounting points on the generator, and it was 2 7/16. So definitely not going to be able to see that from here, but maybe. You can trust me, this is about a tick over 2 3/8. That was like right at 2 7/16. I mean, it's so close. We might be able to get away with it. The belt drives can handle a little bit of misalignment, but if it doesn't work out, we'll put a washer in there and everything will be okay. All right, well, we hit a tiny snag here. It's not the end of the world, but you know, dare to be different means you gotta think on your feet and be ready to customize stuff. Even though the center to center distance here is pretty much dead on, worked out beautifully with the distance off the face of this. What's going on the bottom is what's going to cause us a problem. And you can see there's two ears here on this, and that's mainly because it's so much longer than the alternator. But where that's causing us a problem is the way they designed the bracket was to take advantage of this. On this, there's this big thick boss here, and what you're going to see here is where our problem lies. That big thick boss needs to be in front of that, and it can't be, and there's no way I'm going to cut this thing. You know, it's just steel, but it's original, and I'd never find another one, and who knows, I mean, this ain't a Duesenberg, but somebody may want to put this all back stock one day, and I'm going to keep all the parts for them, because when we got old cars and equipment, tractors, whatever, we're just caretakers. So chopping something up to where it's non-reversible, in my book, that's kind of selfish. So this isn't a hard fab project to make something, and guess what I found in the junkyard? This is a Oldsmobile alternator black bracket. This is kind of the hard part, is finding a socket that'll go on there. You could make all that stuff, but you got to make the holes line up, and it's just a little more work than, you know, sticking two pieces of metal together. The only downside is, of course, is it's backwards. If it was flipped, if it was a mirror image of this, it'd be perfect. I could just cut this down, weld a piece of flat on it, and drill that hole pattern for those two bolts, boom, done. But it's upside down. So I got two of these, and you know, they're not making those anymore either, but they're a heck of a lot more common than a 1950 LT40 Towmotor with the Continental engine bracket. So I'm gonna think about that one, but if nothing else, you know, I kind of get a pattern for what to do. But I got these bolts broke loose. We're gonna take that off, and we'll get something to mount on the bottom, transfer that whole pattern to you know, a piece of angle or something, and weld it onto a receiver down here, and it'll actually probably be better. You know, I mean, if you can't fix it, feature it. Old boss used to tell me, and he's right. You know, we can turn this into a benefit for us, because now I can make these slots, and I got some adjustment if I need it to move it fore and aft, or you know, this direction, and maybe get a little bit better belt alignment if we need it. You know, because this is easy to space out. You know, we can space it out. It's got one bolt down on the, oh gee, where's that go? Water pump maybe. Hard to see. It's in the shadows, but whatever. It's just got one anchor bolt holding it up there. So we're gonna make it work for us, and we're gonna get her done. All right, this is what we got. You see the factory or original generator bracket on the right. We talked about the problems that it had because the position of this front mount didn't line up with the position of the boss on the alternator. So we need kind of this sort of clevis arrangement. This is just a bunch of junk that I found around here. This is a piece of angle from my 4-post lift crate that I had. That big old hole in there is irrelevant. We don't care about that. This is just some, you know, bar stock stuff that had some slots in it. They're a little wider than this, so I don't care. It'll work out. About the same amount of adjustment, and then this is just some pieces that have holes in them that I cut up. Now, I did say that the easy way would be to cut this old Oldsmobile alternator bracket up, because it has the right spacing that we need. I just can't do it. Even though I have two of these, one day somebody might need that. Probably not me, but I'll trade it or give it to them or whatever, and just a little bit more, MIG weld wire on this to get it set up right, and that doesn't wreck something that's original, because no way I'm cutting this whole thing up. So this is the basic shape of what we're going to have. We'll weld it up, or I guarantee I'm gonna have to grind some stuff off, and I'm gonna tack the pieces in place. Of course, that's what you should always do before you get the final fitment. Tack it in there, because it's easier to cut a tack weld loose than to cut loose something that you completely burned in. So we'll get this set up and go from there. All right, here's what I came up with. Nothing pretty, but you'll find out why in a minute. Basically, just wanted to get the hard points here. So this is just a couple pieces of flat that you saw earlier that are just kind of tacked on here, and then cut off the end of that, and booger welded these on here, and made a nice little pivot for this bracket. It works. It's all in the right position. Go back later and clean that up and box this in, and definitely cut the tail off of this here, because this needed to be that wide for the generator, but this is where it ends here for the alternator, so we can really just kind of draw a straight line across here and cut that off. Maybe even kind of do something funny through here, but what we cut out of there we can use for pieces to patch in, and probably round this off too. I think the stock bracket has a nice little radius on there too. I said wasn't really concerned about the appearance of this. I did have to kind of freehand grind a radius on the end of these because they were square, and these were already slotted. This is all 1/4 inch or 6 millimeter stuff, and I didn't want to go to the trouble of trying to drill holes or mill slots into this, which we could have done, but it's just a whole lot more work. And this video is really not about making a bracket, because it's going to vary depending on your application as to what you want to do. As you saw in the beginning, when we were looking at the stock generator bracket, I could have cut up that one, or I could have saved myself some time and cut up my Oldsmobile bracket that fit this, but I don't know. I know I have two of these. I said that, and I was about ready to get the saw out and go to town, but one of these is off of a 350 Olds, and another one's off a 455, and I don't know if they're the same or not. Don't matter. I don't need them. I've got serpentine belt system on my big block Olds. It's in my Cutlass, but this is just scrap metal. This big piece of angle here is really just some folded plate that came on a crate, and it's like 6 millimeter, which is fairly close to 1/4 inch. Close enough that I didn't have to, really go crazy with the weld process to get it to stick. But that's just scrap metal, and I got piles of that stuff. I tend to hoard it because you never know when it's going to come in handy, like right now. And this right here, this is kind of a formed special piece that, probably will never use it. Had it for years, but hate to cut it up, because there might be somebody out there that says, man, I need one of these and I can help them out, or we can trade, or maybe I'll need it, who knows. But we got this mounted up, and I'm not going to make it pretty, and I'll show you why, because we're going to have to take it back off again real soon. Well, here's why we haven't put that alternator back on there. Well, one part of the reason, but the biggest one. Got another 4-post lift, and I needed to have the forklift going to pick this thing up off the trailer that my good buddy so generously allowed me to use and help me move, because this is 2 foot square by 14 foot long, and not the easiest to throw in the bed of a pickup truck. The other part is that alternator that I was showing you guys was had BAD written on the back of it, and that's bad. So I guess I thought it was a good one that I kept in the junk pile, but it was something I just kept for a core. But that's not a big deal. Like I told you, you can get these things for like $20. You can get those GM 10SA alternators for 20, 25 bucks, something like that. Or you snag one out of a junkyard or something and rebuild it. Get you a Delco unit there that you've personally inspected. A little easier to deal with, and I think actually works better than the one wire. But what I needed to do was to put that generator back on, and I'll show you. Put that generator back on because it actually drives the hydraulic pump, or it's part of the system there. It goes around the crank, hydraulic pump. It goes around the crank, hydraulic pump, and the water pump. And I would be okay with running it, since this generator does nothing. I'd be okay with running it without a water pump for a little bit. I think it could take it for as short a time as I would have had to use it. I would have just been careful and not got it hot. But ain't doing nothing without hydraulic pressure. So had to put something back on. Didn't have that bracket ready. So we're going to buy another alternator. We're going to pull this old stuff back off and put the new one on and have it all set up. But I will show you how to wire one, because it's super simple, and you guys need to see that. That's the big lesson in this video is fitting it on there and moving it back and forth. Which like the bracket thing, you can poke around on the web and find out. If you don't know how to build a bracket or cut one up, that's kind of another issue. This is more of the generator for alternator type idea. To show you that wiring it isn't a problem. The mechanical part of it is absolutely the easiest piece of it, and the wiring is a tie. So it's if you want one, jump in and do it, because whether it's an old tractor or an old car or whatever, and like for mine, it's going to be totally reversible, because I'm not going to cut nothing. I'm going to save all these brackets and bolts, and we can put it back the way it is. If somebody wants to restore this one day, I got all the parts. Last thing I want to show you is how you wire these things. It is super simple. You can find this online, but I'll show you right here. It's really connecting this big terminal to this outermost of the 2 spade terminals here, or disconnect terminals here. This goes to your battery, and then this one right here goes to switch power. That is it. Now, you're putting an ammeter, voltmeter in there. Just put them in there like it's supposed to go. If this is on an existing vehicle, I think this actually goes to like the generator, like idiot light. I believe that's what's going on. This is off my Corvair. Corvair didn't come with an alternator either. Came with a generator. This is kind of a conversion. You use a little bit later alternator front and put it on a even newer alternator back, which this back is the same housing that we're putting on the fork truck here that we don't have on, but that's what we're going to end up with. But I want to show you that. So just remember, big terminal to the farthest terminal out here, big terminal to the battery, small terminal to switch power, and you're done. That's it. There is nothing else to do. Now, there is a nice little connector that goes on here. I'll show you that. It looks like this. It's super cheap. You can buy them and plug it in there, and makes it a little fancier. But that's kind of optional. It'll work without it. It's just quicker to pull them both loose at once, and it's got a little snap feature in there to hold it in there. I mean, these are, I don't know, a couple bucks or something at auto parts store. Just a GM alternator plug. That's it, but not required. Nice little boot here too. I would suggest putting that on there too, because this is live. Remember, that's going to the battery, so if you drop a wrench or something on that, it's gonna zap you. Well, how about that? There's another one in the can. Thanks for watching, and I hope you picked something up about how to put a alternator where a generator was, and maybe think about saving a little bit of money and getting a regular alternator instead of a one-wire alternator. If you choose, you can do that. Dare to be different, right? So definitely make sure you use the right size wire gauge. Didn't stress that, didn't mention that. Don't go smaller, go bigger. And like I said, this wiring diagram is all over the internet, so I don't really like repeating stuff. You all got access to the internet, obviously you're watching this channel. But again, do that homework, like, subscribe, share. We enjoy the comments too. So we will see you next time on Smith Motor Works.